9:15 in the morning. The Eastern Mediterranean. The Russian submarine Rostov-on-Don was already submerged and silent. It was not a routine exercise. It was a hunt. The commander held a perfect fire control solution on the largest target in the American fleet. Why had the most advanced sonar net in the world failed to see him? The water was a deep, pressing blue at 400 meters. Above the thermal layer, the Mediterranean was a transit corridor for global commerce. Below it, the Rostov-on-Don moved through a world of shadows. The submarine was a Kilo-class boat. NATO called it the Black Hole for a reason. Its hull was covered in rubber tiles to soak up active sonar. Its engines were mounted on rubber vibration isolators. At 3 knots, it was quieter than the ocean itself. 14 nautical miles to the northeast, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower maintained a steady course. The aircraft carrier was a city of steel. It displaced 95,000 tons. It carried over 60 aircraft and 5,000 souls. To the Russian commander, it was simply a series of acoustic spikes on a waterfall display. The Russian commander leaned over the shoulder of his lead sonar technician. The air in the command center was cool and smelled of ozone. The room was bathed in a dim red light. The commander spoke softly. "Give me the bearing again." The technician did not look up from his screen. Bearing 045. Range is closing. The carrier is maintaining 20 knots. The commander nodded. And the escorts. The technician adjusted his headset. The destroyer Gravely is on the starboard flank, 7 nautical miles from the carrier. They are pinging. They are looking for us. They are looking in the wrong place. This mission was different from any previous encounter. Usually, these games were played at a distance. Both sides knew where the other was. They traded shadow for shadow. But today, the Rostov-on-Don was inside the inner screen. It had slipped through the gap between the destroyers. It was now positioned in the one place a submarine is most dangerous. It was in the baffles of the carrier. It was in the blind spot where the massive wake of the Eisenhower masked the sound of the Russian engines. On the bridge of the USS Gravely, the atmosphere was professional but tense. The destroyer was an Arleigh Burke-class vessel. It was the primary shield for the carrier. The sonar officer reported to the captain. "Sir, acoustic conditions are degrading. The surface layer is heating up. We have a significant shadow zone at 300 meters. The captain of the Gravely looked out at the horizon. The Russian sub was reported leaving Tartus 48 hours ago. It has to be in this sector." The sonar officer shook his head. "If he is rigged for ultra-quiet, we will not hear him until he wants us to." The captain gripped the railing of the bridge. "Increase the ping rate on the active sonar. Tell the Eisenhower we are widening the search pattern." Back inside the Rostov-on-Don, the Russian commander watched the display. He could hear the active pings of the American destroyer. They sounded like metallic hammers hitting a hull. They were loud. They were rhythmic, but they were hitting the thermal layer and bouncing away. "They are getting nervous," the Russian second-in-command whispered. The commander did not smile. He was a professional. "They are right to be nervous. We are 10 minutes from a launch position." He looked at the weapon status board. 2 torpedoes and tubes, 1 and 2, were flooded. The guidance wires were attached. The target was locked. The fire control computer showed a 98% probability of a kill. It was a perfect tactical achievement. It was also a death sentence for 5,000 people if he moved his thumb 2 inches to the right. The morning was still quiet. It would not stay that way. 9:50 in the morning. The USS Gravely was slicing through the whitecaps at 24 knots. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air was cold. The only light came from the glowing blue and green tactical consoles. A young sonar technician sat frozen. He pressed his headset closer to his ears. He adjusted a dial on the console. A faint, rhythmic scratching sound filtered through. The background noise of the sea. It was not biological. It was not a whale or a school of shrimp. It was mechanical. The technician signaled his supervisor. "Chief, I have a transient. Sector 350. The chief petty officer leaned in. He watched the screen. Classification. "Sir, I cannot classify it. It is too faint. It sounds like a pump, or a cooling fan. But it is inconsistent. The chief looked at the position of the carrier. The Eisenhower is right on that bearing. If there is something there, it is sitting in her wake. He tapped a button on his console. Bridge. This is the Combat Information Center. We have a possible contact. Bearing 350. Range unknown. Requesting permission to launch Guardian 1. The response from the bridge was immediate. Control. You are cleared for launch. Get that Seahawk in the air now. 10 minutes later, the flight deck of the Gravely was a hive of activity. The rotors of the MH-60R Seahawk helicopter began to spin. The sound was a deafening roar. The crew moved with practiced precision. They checked the dipping sonar and the acoustic buoys. 10:05 in the morning. The Seahawk lifted off the deck. It banked hard to the north. The pilot spoke into his radio. Guardian 1 is airborne, proceeding to datum. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the Russian commander heard the change in the environment. The sound of the helicopter rotors was distinct, even at 400 meters. It was a high-frequency thrumming that cut through the water. Aviation, the sonar technician reported. One helicopter. He is low. He is hovering. The commander did not move. Is he dropping buoys? Searching. Not yet. He is moving toward the carrier baffles. The Russian commander knew the game had changed. The Americans were no longer guessing. They were investigating. He had to make a choice. He could dive deeper and lose the fire control solution, or he could stay at this depth and risk detection. Maintain depth, the commander ordered. Rig for ultra quiet. No movement, no talking. If he drops a buoy, we will hear it. We wait. The silence inside the submarine was absolute. The crew held their breath. They could hear the faint hum of their own oxygen scrubbers. They could hear the distant pulse of the carrier's massive propellers. 10:15 in the morning. The Seahawk pilot watched his tactical display. He was hovering 500 feet above the churning wake of the Eisenhower. He spoke to his sensor operator. Drop the array. Let's see what is hiding in the wash. The sensor operator pushed a button. The dipping sonar began its descent. It lowered on a long cable into the dark water. It passed through the surface layer. It passed the thermal barrier. Suddenly, the sensor operator's eyes went wide. Pilot, I have a hard return. Solid steel. It is huge. The pilot's voice was steady but urgent. Confirm. Is it the carrier? Negative. The carrier is ahead of us. This is right below the array. 500 yards. We have found him. The screen on the helicopter flashed a bright red warning. Pilot, he is opening his outer doors. He is preparing to fire. 10:20 in the morning. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. The report from the Seahawk helicopter reached the carrier bridge in seconds. It was a flash of red on the tactical display. The admiral looked at the screen. The contact was less than 1,000 yards behind his stern. It was a nightmare scenario for any carrier commander. A quiet diesel-electric submarine was sitting in his own shadow. The admiral did not hesitate. Signal the escorts. We are going to a zigzag pattern. Command the Gravely to prosecute the contact. Tell them to use active sonar only. I want that sub illuminated. On the bridge of the Gravely, the captain received the order. Combat. Set condition 1 for anti-submarine warfare. Arm the torpedo tubes. I want the sonar array at full power. 10:27 in the morning. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the noise was deafening. The dipping sonar from the helicopter was directly above them. The active pings were no longer distant thuds. They were sharp, metallic screams that vibrated through the hull of the submarine. The sonar technician winced. He pulled his headphones away from his ears. Captain, they have a solid lock. The helicopter is tracking our every move. The Russian commander looked at his own display. The USS Gravely was turning. It was increasing speed. It was coming straight for them. They are trying to bracket us, the executive officer said. His voice was tight but controlled. If we stay here, they will drop a training shape to force us to the surface. The commander shook his head. We do not surface. We are in international waters. We have as much right to be here as they do. But we have our tubes open, the officer reminded him. If they see that, they will consider it a hostile act. The commander gripped the edge of the navigation table. Close the outer doors. We will move to 300 meters. Hard dive. Come to new course 270. We will see if the Gravely can keep up with us in a high-speed chase. 10:35 in the morning. The USS Gravely was now 3 miles from the carrier. Its bow was cutting through the waves. The sonar team was shouting updates. Contact is diving. He is turning hard to the west. Speed is increasing. 12 knots. 15 knots. The captain of the Gravely watched the digital representation of the ocean. The Russian sub was trying to run, but at 15 knots, a diesel submarine was no longer silent. Its engines were working hard. Its propeller was cavitating. It was leaving a trail of noise that even a novice sonar operator could follow. He is making a mistake, the captain whispered. He is giving up his stealth for speed. Sir, the tactical officer called out, the Eisenhower is completing her turn. We have a clear line of fire if we need it. The captain nodded. Maintain the track. I want to stay within 2,000 yards of him. If he slows down, I want to know immediately. High above, the Seahawk pilot banked his aircraft. He looked down at the dark water. He could see the faint silhouette of the submarine, just below the surface. It looked like a giant predator trying to vanish into the deep. Guardian, 1 to Gravely. We have him in sight. He is not slowing down. He is heading straight for the path of a commercial tanker. The pilot paused. Captain, there is another contact. On my radar. 50 miles out. High speed. It looks like a pair of Russian fighter jets. The escalation had begun. 10:40 in the morning. The sky above the Mediterranean. 2 Russian Sukhoi 35 fighters screamed across the horizon. They were flying at Mach 1.2. Their wings were swept back. Their engines left long white contrails against the deep blue of the atmosphere. They were not responding to international hailing frequencies. They were heading directly for the center of the American carrier strike group. On the flight deck of the USS Dwight D, Eisenhower, the air boss watched the radar return. His voice was calm but fast. Alert 1 and 2. Launch. Now. 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 2 F-18 Super Hornets were already hooked into the catapults. The steam rose from the deck in thick white plumes. With a thunderous roar, the fighters were flung into the air. They banked hard to the east. They were climbing to 20,000 feet to intercept the incoming Russian jets. The admiral stood in the flag bridge of the carrier. He looked at the tactical map. What is their profile? The air warfare officer responded. Sir, they are flying. A simulated cruise missile release profile. They are pushing the envelope. They want us to lock them up. Rules of engagement, the admiral stated. Sir, we are at yellow. We can illuminate them with radar. We can maneuver to intercept. But we do not fire. Not unless they open a weapon bay or launch a drone. 10:48 in the morning. Beneath the waves, the Russian commander of the Rostov-on-Don felt the shift in the tactical environment. He could no longer hear the sonar pings from the USS Gravely. The American destroyer had been forced to turn its attention to the air threat. The high-speed cavitation of the American fighters overhead was a new acoustic mask. Now, the commander whispered. All stop. Silent running. The submarine slowed. The mechanical noise of its engines faded into nothing. The Rostov-on-Don became a part of the seabed. It was no longer a moving target. It was a ghost. Captain, the sonar technician said, the Gravely has lost us. They are searching 2 miles to the west. They think we continued our high-speed run. The Russian commander checked the navigation chart. The Eisenhower is still on course. She is turning back into the wind to recover her aircraft. She will pass exactly where we are sitting in 5 minutes. He looked at the weapons officer. Flood tubes 1 and 2. Do it slowly. I do not want a single bubble of air to reach the surface. Tubes flooding, the officer replied. Solution is recalculating. Time to intercept is 4 minutes. 10:55 in the morning. The USS Gravely was 4 miles away from the carrier. The captain of the destroyer was staring at a blank sonar screen. The captain spoke to his tactical officer. Where did he go? He was right there. Sir, he likely went to ultra-quiet as soon as the Sukhois arrived. He used the noise of the jets to cover his deceleration. He is sitting still somewhere. The captain looked back at the massive silhouette of the Eisenhower. The carrier was a sitting duck if the submarine had doubled back. Turn us around, the captain ordered. Maximum speed. I want to be between that sub and the carrier. If we cannot find him with sonar, we will find him with our hull. Find him with our hull. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the fire control computer emitted a soft, rhythmic pulse. The screen turned green. The lines of the solution intersected perfectly over the center of the American carrier. The Russian commander reached out. He placed his hand on the firing trigger. It was a cold piece of metal. It felt heavy. Solution is locked, the weapons officer said. We have them. 2 torpedoes. Impact in 90 seconds if we fire now. The commander did not speak. He watched the timer count down. The air in the room seemed to vanish. He was holding the fate of 2 nations in his palm. 11 in the morning. The South Central Mediterranean. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the tension was a physical weight. The Russian commander watched the digital timer on his console. 60 seconds remained until the optimal launch point. The USS Eisenhower was now only 4,000 meters away. The massive hull of the carrier filled the sonar display. It was a target that was impossible to miss. The Russian commander spoke to his weapons officer. Confirm the solution. Do not deviate. The weapons officer responded. The solution is constant. The carrier is maintaining course and speed. She is blind to us. The wake is providing total cover. On the bridge of the USS Gravely, the captain was shouting over the roar of the engines. Sonar. Give me something. Anything. A Kilo-class boat cannot just vanish in open water. The sonar technician was sweating despite the air conditioning. Sir, the carrier wake is too loud. It is creating a wall of acoustic noise. If he is sitting in that wash, he is a ghost. I cannot separate his signature from the carrier propellers. The captain turned to his tactical officer. We are running out of time. If he is back there, he has a clear shot at the Eisenhower's rudders. Prepare the anti-submarine mortars. We are going to conduct a warning attack. Set the fuses for 500 feet. I want to shake him loose. 11:10 in the morning. The Gravely crossed the 3-mile mark from the carrier. The crew moved to the mortar launchers on the aft deck. These weapons were not meant to sink a modern submarine. They were meant to send a message. They were meant to send a message. They were a thunderous, concussive warning that the game was over. The captain spoke into the fleet radio. Eisenhower. This is Gravely. We are commencing active suppression of the suspected contact area. Maneuver to port immediately. The carrier began a slow, ponderous turn. Thousands of tons of steel shifted in the water. Inside the Russian submarine, the sonar technician heard the heavy splashes. Multiple water entries, bearing 300. Small objects. They are not torpedoes. They are depth charges. The Russian commander understood the American intent. Warning shots. They are trying to scare us to the surface. They want to humiliate us. He looked at the firing key. His orders from the Northern Fleet Command were clear. He was to defend the sovereignty of his mission. If the Americans engaged in hostile action, he was authorized to respond with overwhelming force. In his mind, the line had already been crossed. 11:15 in the morning. The first depth charge exploded. The shockwave hit the hull of the Rostov-on-Don like a sledgehammer. The lights in the command center flickered and died for a split second before the emergency power kicked in. Dust fell from the overhead pipes. The submarine groaned under the pressure of the displaced water. The second-in-command grabbed a railing to stay upright. They are attacking us. Captain, the hull is taking stress. We must fire now or we will lose the solution. The Russian commander looked at the green light on his fire control screen. The Eisenhower was turning, presenting its full broadside to his torpedo tubes. It was a perfect kill shot. His window of opportunity was closing. In 30 seconds, the angle would be lost and the carrier would be out of range. His finger tightened on the trigger. He did not look at his crew. He looked at the countdown timer. 10, 9, 8. The air in the submarine felt like it was made of lead. Every man in the room knew what would happen the moment those torpedoes left the tubes. It would not just be a battle. It would be the start of a global catastrophe. The commander closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. Then he made his decision. 11:16 in the morning. The command center of the Rostov-on-Don. The Russian commander did not move. His thumb was white against the firing stud of the torpedo control system. The safety cover was flipped back. The red light of the compartment reflected in his eyes. The air was thick with the smell of scorched insulation and sweat. 5 seconds to intercept, the weapons officer said. His voice was a flat, mechanical monotone. 4, 3, 2. A massive explosion rocked the submarine. It was closer than the last. The USS Gravely had found the range. The hull of the Rostov-on-Don groaned. A high-pressure seal in the aft compartment failed. The sound of high-pressure air escaping was a sharp, piercing shriek. The submarine tilted 15 degrees to port. Men grabbed for handholds. Damage report, the commander barked. Minor flooding in the engine room. The executive officer shouted over the noise. The hull is holding, but they are bracketing us. The next spread will be a direct hit. The commander looked back at the fire control screen. The green lines were still steady. The USS Eisenhower was passing through the center of the crosshairs. It was a perfect tactical moment. The carrier was turning into the wind. Its speed was dropping to recover aircraft. It was at its most vulnerable. 11, 16, and 30 seconds in the morning. On the bridge of the USS Gravely, the captain watched the water. 3 plumes of white foam erupted from the mortar strikes. Again, the captain ordered, "Do not give him time to breathe. I want another 6 rounds in the water. Now." The deck of the destroyer vibrated as the launchers fired. The steel tubes coughed out another volley of anti-submarine projectiles. The captain looked at the carrier. The Eisenhower was a mountain of steel on the horizon. "If he fires," the tactical officer said softly, "we cannot stop it. We are too close for a countermeasure to work." The captain did not respond. He knew the math. If the Russian launched, the Eisenhower would take 2 torpedoes to the stern within 40 seconds. The carrier would not sink immediately, but it would be dead in the water. And then the world would burn. 11:17 in the morning. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the commander felt the sub shudder again. The lights flickered. The cooling fans for the fire control computer slowed down, their pitch dropping to a low moan. The screen stayed green. The target was there. The trigger was ready. The Russian commander looked at the faces of his men. They were young. They were professionals. They were waiting for the word that would change history. He looked at the sonar display. The sound of the carrier propellers was so loud it felt like it was inside his own skull. It was a rhythmic, pulsing beat. The commander's thumb began to move. He applied 3 pounds of pressure. He needed 5. "Target is at 0 range," the weapons officer whispered. "Fire." The commander stared at the screen. He saw the massive signature of the American ship. He saw the lives of 5,000 sailors. He saw the inevitable response that would follow. 11:17 in the morning. The Mediterranean seafloor. The Russian commander felt the metal of the trigger yield. 1 pound of pressure remained. In the engine room, the flooding had been contained. The submarine was stable. The solution was perfect. Suddenly, the sonar technician screamed. He threw his headset onto the deck and clutched his head. "Captain, the noise. It is everywhere. Sound like 1,000 freight trains. Passed through the hull of the Rostov-on-Don. It was not an explosion. It was a massive, low-frequency roar that vibrated the very bones of the crew. On the waterfall display, the clear acoustic spikes of the carrier and the destroyer vanished. They were swallowed by a solid wall of white light. The fire control computer emitted a long, dying beep. The screen turned black. The solution was gone. On the bridge of the USS Gravely, the tactical consoles flickered. The sonar chief fell back from his station. "Sir, sensor whiteout. Total acoustic saturation. I have nothing. The captain of the Gravely grabbed the radio. Eisenhower. Bridge. Did you just experience a seismic event? The response from the carrier was static. Then, a voice broke through. Gravely. This is Eisenhower. We have lost all underwater sensors. We have a massive acoustic anomaly on all bearings. It is off the charts. 11:18 in the morning. The roar faded as quickly as it had arrived, but the damage was done. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the electrical systems were resetting. The commander looked at his hand. It was shaking. The trigger was no longer live. The computer was rebooting. He had been seconds away from starting a war, and the ocean itself had stopped him. Status, the commander whispered. His voice was hollow. Systems are coming back online, the executive officer said. But the target, Captain, the carrier is gone from the screen. We are blind. The Americans, the commander asked. Can they see us? Negative. Their pings have stopped. The Gravely is dead in the water. A long pause filled the red-lit room. The aggression that had fueled the last hour was gone. It was replaced by a cold, clinical confusion. Something had happened that defied their training. The tactical certainty of the fire control solution had been replaced by a primal realization. They were not the only ones in the deep. The Russian commander looked at the dark fire control screen. He did not feel relief. He felt a deep, unsettling sense of being watched. Do not reload the computer, the commander ordered. Close the outer doors. We are leaving. 11:20 in the morning. The Combat Information Center of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. The admiral stood behind the main tactical rail. The room was a chaos of controlled energy. Damage control teams reported status from every deck. The ship had been rocked by the acoustic wave, but the hull was intact. The admiral looked at the sensor chief. I want an answer. Was that a Russian weapon? The chief shook his head. He was staring at a screen filled with jagged white lines. Sir, every hydrophone from here to Sicily, just pegged at maximum decibels. It was not a localized blast. It was a massive displacement of water. It felt like a tectonic shift. But there is no seismic activity on the global net. No earthquakes, no volcanic eruptions. The sub, the admiral asked. Where is the sub? Vanished. The acoustic clutter is still too high. It is like trying to find a needle in a thunderstorm. The Rostov-on-Don has likely used the noise to mask its departure. The admiral turned to his chief of staff. What about the Russian fighters? The Sukhois have broken their attack profile. They are climbing to 40,000 feet. They seem as confused as we are. They are orbiting the area where the sound originated. 11:25 in the morning. Inside the Rostov-on-Don, the Russian commander watched his crew. They were moving with a new kind of urgency. It was no longer the adrenaline of the hunt, it was the survival instinct of the cornered. The auxiliary power was holding. The main computer screen flickered to life. The green lines of the fire control solution did not return. Instead, the screen showed a jagged, white mess of interference. The executive officer leaned in close. Captain, we can recalibrate the sonar in 3 minutes. We can find the carrier again. We still have the advantage of the thermal layer. The commander looked at the man. His eyes were hard and distant. No, look at the depth gauge. The needle was vibrating. The pressure outside the hull was fluctuating in ways that the physics of the ocean did not allow. We are at 400 meters, the commander said. But the external sensors are reading a pressure depth of 800. The water density has changed. The entire column of water around us is in flux. The executive officer stared at the gauge. That is impossible. Physics does not work that way. Today, the commander replied, impossible is the new baseline. We are breaking contact. Hard dive to 500 meters. New course, south. We are leaving the sector. The weapons officer looked up from his station. The torpedoes, sir. The tubes are still flooded. Drain the tubes, the commander ordered. Close the outer doors. We are no longer the aggressors. We are witnesses. 11:30 in the morning. The USS Gravely slowed to 10 knots. The mortar launchers were silent. The captain stood on the wing of the bridge. He looked at the water where the Russian sub had been only minutes before. The sea was calm now. The white foam of the depth charges had dissipated into the blue. The tactical officer stepped out onto the bridge. "Sir, the Eisenhower is resuming her transit. The Admiral has downgraded the alert to yellow. The air wing is being recovered." The captain wiped salt spray from his face. "Did we hit him? We do not know. But the sensor sweep is clear. Whatever was down there is gone, and whatever made that noise is gone too." The captain looked toward the horizon. The Russian fighters were banking away. They were heading back toward the coast of Syria. The immediate threat of war had evaporated, as quickly as a morning mist. But a heavy mystery remained. He had the shot. The captain whispered to himself. He was right behind us. He had the fire control solution. Why did he not fire before the noise started? Maybe he heard the same thing we did, sir, the officer suggested. Maybe he realized that the ocean was trying to tell to us something. The captain nodded slowly. Maybe. Or maybe he realized that once you pull that trigger, there is no way to take the bullet back. Regardless of what happened in the water, he chose to wait. That choice saved us all. The two ships began to move apart. The hunter and the prey had both been humbled by a power they did not understand. 11:45 in the morning, the deep trenches of the Ionian Basin. The Rostov-on-Don was now descending through 500 meters. The Russian submarine was moving at a crawl. The commander stood by the central navigation plot. He watched the digital depth gauge. The pressure readings had finally stabilized. The strange fluctuations in water density had vanished as quickly as they had arrived. The commander spoke to his executive officer. Status of the engine room. The officer looked up from a clipboard. The leak is sealed. The vibration in the main shaft has subsided. We are fully operational, but the crew is shaken. They are asking about the noise. The commander looked at the men in the command center. They were looking at him for an explanation he did not have. Tell them it was a localized seismic event, a shifting of the tectonic plates. It is rare, but it happens. We were simply in the wrong place at the right time. Do you believe that, Captain? The officer asked quietly. It does not matter what I believe, the commander replied. What matters is that we are no longer in a firing position. We have failed our primary objective to remain undetected, but we have preserved the boat. That is our new priority. 12 noon. The bridge of the USS Gravely. The sun was high overhead now. The Mediterranean was a sheet of sparkling sapphire. To any observer on the surface, it looked like a perfect day for a cruise. But on the tactical screens, the scars of the morning were still visible. The sonar chief entered the bridge. He looked exhausted. He handed a tablet to the captain. "Sir, we have analyzed the acoustic signature of the anomaly. It does not match any known seismic profile. It was too clean, too rhythmic at the start. It was like a massive pulse of energy rather than a random shifting of rock." The captain looked at the data. Could it have been a Russian experimental weapon? Some kind of acoustic dazzler? The sonar chief shook his head. If they have something that powerful, they would have used it before we found them, not after. And besides, it affected their boat too. We heard their cavitation when the wave hit. They were just as blind as we were. 12:10 in the afternoon. The flight deck of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. The last of the F-18 Super Hornets caught the wire and came to a screaming halt. The pilots climbed out of their cockpits. They did not celebrate. They did not exchange high fives. They walked toward the debriefing rooms with their helmets in their hands. They had seen the Russian jets up close. They had seen how close the world had come to a kinetic exchange. In the Admiral's cabin, the secure line to the Pentagon was open. The Admiral spoke into the encrypted handset. "The contact has been lost. We are resuming our scheduled transit to the Suez Canal. The Russian fighters have returned to their base in Syria. The immediate threat has subsided." A voice on the other end asked a question. "No," the Admiral responded. "We did not fire." The Gravely conducted a defensive warning pattern with mortars. The Russian sub held its position, but did not launch. We were seconds away from a launch authorization. Then the anomaly occurred. The admiral paused. He looked out the reinforced window at the vast, empty ocean. Yes, I agree, it was a lucky coincidence, or perhaps it was something else. Regardless, the Rostov-on-Don is gone. We are out of the kill zone. 12:15 in the afternoon. The distance between the American strike group and the Russian submarine was now over 30 nautical miles. The electronic tether that had bound them together for the last 3 hours had finally snapped. Both sides were retreating into the safety of their own territories. The crisis had resolved. There were no sunken ships. There were no dead sailors. On the surface, it would appear as though nothing had happened. But in the secret logs of two navies, the date would be marked in red. They had touched the edge of a total war, and something in the deep had pushed back. 1 in the afternoon. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. The carrier was back on its primary mission. The massive ship moved, with a deceptive grace through the swell. On the flight deck, the yellow-shirted handlers moved aircraft with the same efficiency they had shown during the crisis. The Alert 1 status had been canceled. The pilots were in the mess deck, eating in silence. There was no cheering. There was no sense of victory. They knew how close they had come to a launch that would have ended their world. The admiral stood on the flag bridge. He was watching the USS Gravely through binoculars. The destroyer was a mile away, its wake a white scar on the blue water. The admiral spoke to his chief of staff. "What is the final sonar report from the Gravely?" The chief of staff consulted a digital pad. "Sir, they have conducted 3 full sweeps. The sector is clear. The Rostov-on-Don has likely entered a deep layer transit. They are heading toward the Algerian basin." "And the anomaly?" the admiral asked. "The acoustic signature has faded completely. The science teams at the Office of Naval Intelligence are calling it a rare deep-water gas release, a methane hydrate pocket that collapsed under pressure. It created a massive acoustic shadow." The admiral lowered his binoculars. "A methane pocket. That is a very convenient explanation for something that almost started a war." "It is the official explanation, sir," the chief replied. "The Pentagon wants this incident categorized as a localized environmental event. No mention of the fire control solution. No mention of the Russian fighter profiles." The admiral nodded. "Understood. Tell the crew they did their jobs. We maintained the screen. We protected the carrier. That is all they need to know." 1:30 in the afternoon. The Rostov-on-Don. The submarine was at 600 meters. The air was getting heavy. The oxygen candles were being burned to keep the atmosphere breathable. The crew was moving in slow motion to conserve energy. The commander had retreated to his small cabin. He sat at his desk. The mission log was open before him. The executive officer knocked and entered. "Captain, we have reached the designated waypoint. We are clear of the American sensor net." The commander did not look up. He was staring at a blank page in the logbook. "The torpedo tubes. Are they dry?" "Yes, sir." "Secured and inspected. No damage to the seals." "The fire control computer," the commander asked. "Did we salvage this data from the lock?" The executive officer hesitated. "No, sir. The acoustic surge wiped the buffer. The solution is gone. It is as if it never existed." The commander finally looked up. His face was pale in the dim light. "Perhaps that is for the best. If Moscow saw how close we were, they would ask why I did not pull the base trigger the moment the solution turned green." "You were waiting for the final confirmation of intent, Captain," the officer said. "It was a professional decision. It was a human decision," the commander corrected him. "And the ocean made the final call. For us, I will record the event as a tactical malfunction due to seismic interference. There will be no mention of the Eisenhower's vulnerability." The commander picked up his pen. He wrote 3 words in the log. "Mission continues." Silence. 2 in the afternoon. The open sea. The distance between the two forces was now 70 nautical miles. On the radar screens of the Mediterranean monitoring stations, the area was peaceful. The merchant ships continued their slow crawl toward Suez. The fishing boats returned to their ports. The tension of the morning had left no physical trace on the surface of the water. The crisis had fully resolved. The two most powerful military machines on the planet had brushed against each other in the dark. They had prepared for the end. Then, they had chosen to step back. The silence that followed was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of two predators who now knew exactly where. The other was hiding. The ocean was empty. The ghost had vanished. But the memory of that perfect fire, 7:15 in the evening. Washington, District of Columbia. The sun had set over the Potomac River. The evening commute had ended. But the lights on the third floor of the Pentagon were still burning. Inside the National Underwater Intelligence Center, the air was cool and smelled of recycled oxygen. Analysts in dark suits sat before a massive digital wall. They were replaying the final 60 seconds of the encounter. The data from the USS Gravely was displayed in a series of vibrating green lines. It was a high-resolution map of the acoustic environment of the Mediterranean. The analysts were looking at the moment the fire control solution was reached. They were looking at the moment the world nearly stopped. One of the analysts pointed to a spike on the graph. There. That is not a seismic wave. Look at the rise time. It is too fast. It hits peak decibels in less than 2 milliseconds. A senior officer leaned in. Could it be a cavitation burst from the kilo? No, sir. A submarine propeller cannot displace that much water that quickly. This was a broad-spectrum acoustic pulse. It was directed. It was structured. It was designed to overload every sensor in a 20-mile radius. 7:15 in the evening, Moscow. The same conversation was happening in a bunker deep beneath the Kremlin. The room was filled with the smell of stale coffee and heavy tobacco. The chief of the naval staff looked at a paper printout of the internal logs of the Rostov-on-Don. The commander says he was seconds from launch, the chief said. He had the authorization. He had the solution. Why did he wait? He says he felt a change in the water, a younger officer replied. He says the pressure sensors on the one pole began to fluctuate. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, the pulse arrived. The chief of staff stared at the paper. He did not hesitate because of the Americans. He hesitated because the ocean told him to. The political fallout was handled with a cold, surgical precision. There were no press conferences. There were no diplomatic cables. Instead, a series of encrypted messages were exchanged through the highest levels of the intelligence community. Both nations understood that a full-scale investigation would reveal a truth that neither was prepared to handle. If the public knew that a mysterious power could neutralize the most advanced weapon systems in the world in an instant, the global order would collapse. The illusion of military dominance was the only thing keeping the peace. By 9 o'clock that evening, the agreement was reached. The official story was drafted. The USS Eisenhower had conducted a routine transit. The Russian submarine had been tracked and monitored. A small seismic event had caused minor sensor interference. The case was closed. But in the quiet of the night, the leaders of both nations were left with a terrifying realization. The Mediterranean was no longer a theater for their games. Something else was operating in the deep. Something that did not care about treaties or borders. Something that had the power to stop a war with a single sound. The strategic assessment was clear. The age of the silent submarine was over. A new age of uncertainty had begun. And the watchers were being watched. The reports were filed. The analysts went home to their families. But the data remained in the vaults. It was a ghost that would not rest. The ocean had spoken. And for the first time in history, the kings of the world had listened. 3 days later, the North Atlantic and the Barents Sea, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower had passed through the Suez Canal and was now in the Red Sea. The heat of the desert air was a sharp contrast to the cool depths of the Mediterranean. On the bridge, the routine of a carrier at sea had returned. The deck logs for the day of the encounter were signed, sealed, and flown off the ship in a high-security pouch. They were no longer the property of the crew. They belonged to history. 2,000 miles to the north, the Rostov-on-Don surfaced in the cold, gray waters of the Polyarny naval base. The submarine looked small against the jagged cliffs of the Russian coast. Its black hull was stained with salt and the wear of a long deployment. The commander stood on the bridge of the sail as the tugs pushed the boat toward its pier. He watched the snowy landscape. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man who had looked into an abyss and seen something looking back. The military analysis of the event would continue for decades. In the secure briefing rooms of the Pentagon, the incident was given a code name, the Silent Solution. It was studied not for the acoustic anomaly, but for the human behavior that preceded it. The strategic assessment was clear. The Russian commander had held a perfect fire control solution. He had the tactical advantage. He had the legal authorization. He had the physical means to destroy a centerpiece of American power. But he had waited. He had paused in the final seconds of the countdown. Experts would later argue that this pause was the most significant moment in modern naval history. It was a rejection of the mathematical inevitability of war. In an era of high-speed computers and automated weapons, the final decision had rested with a single human being. And that human being had chosen to doubt. The anomaly, the massive pulse of sound that had blinded both sides, was eventually classified as a natural phenomenon. But among the sonar technicians and the submariners who were there, a different theory persisted. They spoke in hushed tones in the corners of dark bars. They talked about a sound that was too rhythmic to be a gas release. They talked about a presence in the Mediterranean that seemed to intervene only when the steel was about to clash. Modern warfare is often described as a game of chess played with invisible pieces. It is a world of sensors, stealth, and calculated risks. But the encounter between the Rostov-on-Don and the Eisenhower proved that the most important variable is not the technology. It is the restraint of the person behind the machine. The trigger was never pulled. The missiles did not fly. The 5,000 souls on the carrier continued their lives, unaware of how close they had come to a watery grave. The Russian commander never explained his decision to his superiors. He simply stated that the tactical environment had become unstable. History is defined by the battles that are fought, but sometimes it is redefined by the battles that are avoided. The Silent Solution was a reminder that in the deep, dark places of the world, there are forces more powerful than the pride of nations. The Mediterranean was quiet again. The waves rolled over the spot where the ghost had sat in the shadow of the giant. The water kept its secrets. It always had. It always would. The most advanced weapons in the world are designed to destroy. But on a Tuesday morning in the middle of a contested sea, they were stopped by a choice. And as long as that choice remains in human hands, there is still a chance for the silence to hold.